again, it's possibility versus probability. Is it possible that even giving all this modeling that they still merge, or that they run one candidate per riding? This is going to be an important one. We must have received 50 messages, emails, Discord, Facebook, Twitter, like every mode of communication. We received people asking about this particular topic, so we did the deep dive. So make sure you stay tuned.
And we went deep.
We really did.
Deep.
This was like a Rive can deep. We spent so much time on it last night in particular, because we'd been doing it since Friday, since we started getting all these messages, but we were up so late last night that we're just like, let's just go to bed and not do a regular video.
Yeah, I actually had to use my old career to actually, help me with this video and data and informatics and AI data modeling and trend predictions and all of this. So, but we got it done. So that was a good thing. I will give everybody a spoiler alert so we can kind of make everybody relax. We have good news at the end. So
we're going to go through a bunch of scenarios. We've modeled some things based on real data. There was also some studies already done on this topic, but they're a little bit outdated, but we'll talk about all that.
Yeah. So let's get to the article by research.co. So this was written in October 13th of 2023. And just so everybody knows, this topic is not new. This has been talked about for a while. So
I found articles as far back as 2008 discussing.
Yeah, so this is not
merger,
a France. This is not a France prompted scenario.
Yeah, and then when we had asked someone that we know who works in Parliament, have you heard about this? And they're like, oh yeah, they've been saying that for literally decades.
Yeah, so anyhow, let's get through this. Half of Canadians disagree with the two centre-left parties joining forces before the next election to the House of Commons. Vancouver, BC, a merged political organization encompassing the Liberal Party and the New Democratic Party would still trail the Conservative Party in a Canadian federal campaign, a new Research Co. poll has found. The online survey of a representative national sample asked Canadians to ponder their options in a federal election if the Liberals and the New Democrats merge into a single party. If the new party contested the election under current Prime Minister and Liberal leader Justin Trudeau, the Conservatives would be in first place among decided voters with 42%, followed by the new party, 36%, the Bloc Québécois, 8%, the Green Party, also 8%, and the People's Party, 2%. In this scenario, the merged Liberal NDP party trails in Ontario 38% to 43%, and British Columbia 35% to 49%. In Quebec, the new party has a 6-point lead over the Bloc, 39% to 33%, with the Conservatives at 21%. If the new party were headed by current NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, the Conservatives would still be ahead nationally, 43%, followed by the merged Liberal NDP party, 36%, the Bloc, 9%, the Greens, 7%, and the People's Party, 2%. Once again, the Conservatives have an advantage over the new party in Ontario, 44% to 38%, and British Columbia, 50% to 35%, but are third in Quebec, 21%, with the new party at 36% and the Bloc at 35%. Quote, Canadians aged 35 to 54 are particularly unenthused about the prospect of a merged Liberal NDP party contesting the next federal election, end quote, says Mario Canseco, president of Research Co. Among these voters, support for the new entity stands at 35%, with Trudeau at 31% with Singh. The survey also gauged 3 ideas that could materialize before the next election. Half of Canadians, 50%, oppose a full merger between the Liberals and the NDP, while 36% are in favour. Support for a true merger between the two parties stands at 56% among Liberal voters in the last federal election, and at 36% among those who cast ballots for NDP candidates in 2021. The notion of the Liberals and the NDP only running candidates from one of the two parties in every riding in Canada is backed by 35% of Canadians and rejected by 49%. Conservative voters in 2021 are particularly opposed to this idea, naturally, at 70%. Just under half of Canadians, 48%, would support a formal agreement between the Liberals and the New Democrats to share power in a coalition government, while 43% disagree and 10% are undecided. So what does that all mean? What that means is that Research Co. decided to do a national poll, and what they found is that about half of the country doesn't want them to merge. And only about a third are in favor. It means that some people aren't sure, and some people have some different opinions. So a third.
And keep in mind that this Research.co study was done almost a year ago. It was done in October. So things may have changed from then until now. And also this particular study, they only had a sample size of 1,000, which is kind of, I think, considered like the minimum for studies. Like it's a good sample size. They consider it representative, but it's not great. And then the other thing is that this was also done online. The problem with online surveys is that you really have no idea who is answering the questions. You can geo-block it. You can, make people check off. Are you from Canada? Yes, no, whatever. People rely on surveys all the time. So there's no certain way to make sure that the people you're asking are actually representative of the people you want to be asking, i.e. Canadians.
So we were interested in what that data was that Research Co. actually did their poll on. So we decided to get it. So this is the data here. So it's a little small, but there's, it goes by demographic, it goes by age, it goes by region. So where they broke this down is they obviously gave, people a certain list of questions or even a rating scale. And what they broke it down into is the respondents would end up falling into a few categories. They either strongly support the idea, they moderately support the idea, or they moderately oppose the idea, they strongly oppose the idea, or they're not sure. So there's two main themes that we're focusing on here. The top one is a full merger between the Liberals and the NDP. That means there's one party, there's no distinction, there's one leader, and it's going to be either Justin Trudeau or Jagmeet Singh. That's the top set of data. The bottom set of data is the cooperative agreement that Karima was talking about, which is they agree to run, different candidates in different ridings, and they see what happens, and then maybe they form a coalition government at the end. Now, Jagmeet Singh has already said that he's not going to do a coalition government, but he's about as honest as a politician. So that's the first set of data. But really, what we're interested in is down here. This is the combined results of what each voter identified as. So do they identify as a Liberal, a Conservative, or an NDP person? And you can see that the 56% of Liberals that support the idea can be found by adding up the 20% who strongly support and the 36% who moderately support. So that's what we're working with. Now, that's great. So Research Co. says, based on their stuff, there's not a lot to worry about. Well, we don't take things for granted. So,
and again, remember, this survey by Research Co. was done nearly a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago.
So things have changed. So
we did something interesting. So what I did is I took that data, that survey data, and although it was done back in October of last year, that's the latest set of data that we have for a survey of that type. So I took that data and I took the combined polling data from both Abacus and Nanos for every riding in Canada and said, what if we had an election today? Let's aggregate those two data sets between Nanos and Abacus, and then we take the data from the people that support and don't support this idea, What would that give us? So that's what I was spending till midnight modeling last night.
Past midnight.
What we did is we took the two scenarios. Scenario 1, the Liberals and the NDP merge. That's scenario 2, because I'm going to be showing these in reverse order. And the other scenario is they agree to cooperate in the election and run one candidate per riding to maximize the voter output.
So that's the first set of graphs that we'll be looking at.
Yes.
We've been calling it electoral cooperation.
Yeah.
So that that's where in any given riding, normally you'd have NDP, Conservative, and Liberal candidate, all three of them. In this scenario, the electoral cooperation, you would have your Conservative candidate and either an NDP or a Liberal, not both. Now, a lot of people were asking about how is this possible? How is this legal? It is perfectly legal for parties to only run candidates in certain ridings.
They do it all the time.
Yeah. In fact, to be registered as a party in Canada, you only need to have one candidate running in one riding somewhere in the country, and you can be considered a registered party.
Yeah, you could I don't know if they'd allow the name, but you could start the Trudeau Sucks party and run one candidate. And
I don't think they would allow that one. There's actually on Elections Canada, and I think I may have included the link. Yeah, I think I put the link in the description that there are some guidelines on what a registered party actually is. But that's one of them, that you only need one candidate somewhere in the country.
Yeah. So anyhow. So scenario 1 that we're going to be looking at is the one candidate per party. The parties are still separate. Now, let's bring up the data. So what you're looking at is there's 3 separate assumptions within the scenario. The first one is I assumed that none of the Liberal voters that said that they either moderately oppose or strongly oppose the notion of this would vote. They would just say, well, I'm not voting NDP. I'm just going to sit back, and that's all there is to it. The second scenario, or second assumption, is that half of those Liberal voters vote NDP. And the last scenario is that it's a realistic voting model. So some voters will actually shift conservative, some voters will refuse to vote at all, some voters will use strategic thinking, and that would result in how their vote is counted. Now, you're only seeing the red line because that's just the combination of both the NDP and the Liberal votes. So if they decided today to run one candidate in each party, the Conservatives still make out with a majority government. Okay? That's really important to note. So everyone should take a big sigh of relief seeing these numbers. That would just, it wouldn't make a difference. They would have less of a majority, but they're still going to make out with a majority. Now, let's look at the second scenario where you have the parties actually merging. And remember, there was a completely separate data set for that on how people felt about that. So, do they beat the Conservatives if the parties merge? No, not at all. And it's the same assumptions all the way through. So first assumption, none of the Liberals vote. Second assumption, half of them vote. And the third one is the more realistic voting pattern. So they still get a majority in every single scenario.
And these are modeled on current polling data from Abacus and Nanos, you said, from
combined
within the past, couple weeks?
Yes, it's the latest polling data that Nanos and Abacus have. So it doesn't matter if they run one candidate per riding or if the parties go through a full merger. The Conservatives still win a majority government. So, and this is all very accurate data. I made sure to double check and check the confidence level of this, and it's quite accurate. It was interesting setting the model up, but that's, I won't bore anybody about that. But this is something that I think we kind of knew, but it's very nice to see the data actually reflect that. Now, why will the data end up like this? Again, you can't just take the popular vote and add it together. Why is that? Because there's a lot of voters that vote for the Liberals that hate the NDP, and a lot of voters that vote for the NDP that hate the Liberals. So the fact that both of them say, well, we're gonna collaborate and work together, a bunch of them are going to be like, screw you both. I'm not voting for either of you. Yeah,
we already know Liberals who, again, are very prominent people within, the administrative part of the party who are like, you know what? I'm not voting Liberal again until JT's out of office.
Right.
So there surely will be people who are like, you guys decided to merge, or you guys decided to only run NDP in this riding when I wanted to vote Liberal. I'm not voting.
Right, because they're going to end up with an MP, assuming that person wins, that's not of their party and is not going to take their interests. Yet they're going to be expected to vote. And that's the other thing. All of these people now, at least if I were one of these people, I'd be feeling, oh, I see how it is. So you're not going to let us choose who is the one that's actually going to be representing our party. Both of you are looking at us and you're saying, no. You don't get to choose. We are presenting the candidate and you're going to vote for them. How out of touch is that message to
arrogant.
Your voters?
It's extremely arrogant.
Especially after 9 years of crap. So you're really going to tick off a lot of people if you do that, right? And of course they're going to be like, oh, well, we're doing this because we can't let the right-wing politics. They're not going to care. They're going to be like, both of you? No.
Well, and the other thing is the party that gets the most votes usually is a center party or whoever's most towards the center. The NDP and the Liberals are way, way left right now. So the Conservatives are most towards the center. So if you take away that Liberal choice, let's say, from somebody going into to vote, and they're only presented with, some fringe parties like the Green or Rhino Party or whatever, and then also Conservative and NDP, maybe they don't want to. Maybe they don't want to vote NDP.
Well, here's the other thing to consider. One of the messages that we've received from inside the Liberal side of things is that a lot of the Liberal MPs are not happy with how far left the Liberal Party has moved. So in order for this to happen, that would mean that this party is going to be cemented as a far left party. So they're not going to be too happy about that. So they're not going to be, ones to support this type of action one way or the other, either a merge or, running one candidate per riding. And plus, now you're saying to a bunch of the candidates in the NDP and the Liberals, oh, by the way, you don't get to run in this election.
Yeah, because they haven't picked all their candidates, but they have picked a good number of them.
The NDP have said that they've picked almost all of their candidates. So you're gonna tick off a bunch of people in the party. Never mind voters.
And that's it. You need the party on board, because if the Liberals and NDP hypothetically decide that they want to merge, both parties, the members, are the ones who need to agree to it. And again, most Liberals, they went into be a Liberal Party member expecting a center-left party, not a far-left party. And they certainly wouldn't want to join forces with a far-left party. I honestly think it's more likely that the NDP would join with the Greens over joining with the Liberals.
Yeah, so...
And again, that's just hypothetical too. I'm not saying I have any inside information, but I'm just saying they align better than Liberal and NDP.
There's a whole, we could go literally on for a long time, but more reasons why this is unlikely to happen. But, the fact that they've been talking about this for decades and they haven't done it means that It's not a great idea. And yeah, they're both on the left, but the NDP are supposed to be really ideologically further left than the Liberals. And this is what a lot of the Liberal caucus is actually worried about. They don't like that they've drifted too far left, so they want to bring it back to the center. So,
and one other scenario that we had spoken about while we were researching, but also we've spoken about this previously on another live stream. I've got the link in the description, so I'm not going to go through the whole scenario in detail the way we did with the previous ones. But this scenario would be that we go to election, the Conservatives win a minority government, also known as a plurality, and then the Liberals and the NDP decide to kind of overthrow that, form their own party, and form a coalition, and they be government again. Is this possible? Yes, it is possible according to our Constitution. However, it's one of those things that it's like, well, it's technically possible, but it's not going to happen. We do get into the details of why it won't happen in the other live stream video. So if you haven't seen it before, check it out after this live stream's done. But basically, there's not a snowball's chance in hell right now because the Conservatives are going to end up with a super majority, not just a regular majority, a super majority. So there's no way that that's going to happen.
Well, the other thing is because a lot of people keep referencing France. France has a very, very, very different political system than we do. If you don't know, France has a semi-parliamentary republic.
So they have a prime minister and they have a president.
And the president appoints the prime minister. And even when the elections are happening for the parties, there's 2 rounds of votes for each of the parties. So it's a very, very different system. And coalitions are a lot more common under the France parliamentary system than the Canadian parliamentary system. Coalitions are very rare. I can only think of maybe one off the top of my head. You could argue this is a coalition that they have right now, but it's not really, because a coalition government means both parties have members in cabinet.
Whereas this one, the NDP are supporting the Liberals on all major votes, but they're not really getting anything in return. Like if they were smart, they would have asked to put somebody in cabinet.
Anyway, we have a much more up-to-date article that we want to talk through, and this was actually done recently on July 12th by the Edmonton Journal. So let's pull that up. So this starts partway down the article, and again, all these links will be in the description, where they start talking about what their opinion is of the agreement if they were to merge. Such an agreement would make sense along ideological lines. Trudeau and Singh have similar views on numerous issues, from heavy government intervention in the economy to a plethora of social policy issues ranging from drugs and criminal justice to immigration and abortion. The Liberals now have 156 seats, the Conservatives 118, and the NDP 24. Together, this has been enough for the Liberals and NDP to push ahead with their shared agenda. Divided, it appears the Conservatives will hammer both of them in the next election, with Canada 338 now predicting 213 Conservative seats, 72 Liberal seats, and 18 NDP seats. That's if they take them right in the middle. But if the Liberals and NDP agree to withdraw candidates in winnable big city ridings, thus giving a push to leading Liberal and NDP candidates, could they unite to prevent the Conservatives from taking power? Such an agreement seems unlikely, given the proud and distinct history of both parties. In the face of that, however, I'll again remind you that in the recent election in France, their own warring versions of our Liberal and NDP parties came together in the complicated runoff phase of the election. That's the first of the 2 voting rounds in France. Hard left and left of center parties withdrew candidates in almost 1/3 of the ridings in order to give leading left-wing candidates a better chance of winning. So basically what they did is in the runoff, they saw which candidate on which party was going to do the best. And they were able to make the decision to take away the candidates from the parties that weren't going to win. This is why it's very, very different than Canada. We don't have the opportunity to do that. On July 7th, the plan worked to keep the right wing out of power. The example in France got much attention in Canada, with some left-of-centre Canadians taking inspiration. Quote, "Here's hoping the Liberal Party and the NDP are taking a page or two from France's playbook," end quote, said Roberto Faria, a Toronto brand strategist. Not a political strategist, a brand strategist.
Oh, brand strategy is part of political strategy.
It is, but political strategy isn't necessarily part of brand strategy.
Political strategy is more like actually playing chess, whereas brand strategy is like painting the pieces.
Yeah. If Liberal and NDP backers hope to avoid seeing their policies emphatically and ferociously reversed in favour of a Conservative vision of Canada, the temptation to work together, as seen in France, could well feel like an imperative. But might such a strategy work on election day? I have my doubts. Spark Advocacy conducted a June poll that uncovered a desire by the majority of Canadians for a more right-wing approach to government. Quote, most, 64%, Canadians want a centrist government, but only 48% say they think that is what Mr. Trudeau is offering. Only 13% want a left-of-centre government, but 37% say they think that is what the Liberals under Trudeau are offering. Mr. Trudeau's biggest gap lies with those who say they prefer a centrist government that has a focus on economic and fiscal issues, people who could be characterized as centre-right. This is the largest segment of the voting public, representing 38% of the electorate, and Trudeau trails Poilievre by 28 points among this group. Quote, the Conservatives are poised to run the table in parts of the country where the Liberals have done well in the past, end quote, said Bruce Anderson, Chief Strategy Officer at Spark Advocacy. Whenever Trudeau and Singh attempt, most Canadians want a correction or a move to the right. No matter what electoral maneuvers the Liberals and NDP might concoct, I suspect the hunger for change will dominate the election and its results. Meaning, as per the polls, it doesn't matter what the Liberals or the NDP do at this point. It's almost cast what the majority of Canadians are going to vote at. That doesn't mean that we need to be complacent. That doesn't mean we can celebrate victory. Someone said it earlier, and this is what the Conservatives are doing. They are not taking a single riding for granted.
Well, it's interesting. Our MP had mentioned it to us one time that, you know, the way Pierre operates, I suppose, is that he kind of acts like the Conservatives are 1 point behind always, and that they need to catch up and keep that momentum so that they can then pass the Liberals. Even if they're 20 points ahead, doesn't matter. He works as if they're always 1 point behind. Again, it's possibility versus probability. Is it possible that even giving all this modeling that they still merge, or that they run one candidate per riding? Yeah, it's absolutely possible. Is it probable that they're going to do it? No, because the effects don't matter. Like, the Conservatives are still going to win.
And again, this does not take into account, assuming the election is going to happen next October, it doesn't take into account what happens when all of these fixed rate people that bought a house during COVID have their mortgages mature next year.
Oh, you mean like us?
What happens to their homes? What happens to their income? What happens when the carbon tax goes up again? What happens over the winter when people feel the April carbon tax go up? And there's even more rumbling about that. So it just gets worse and worse and worse for everybody under the Trudeau government. So it doesn't matter if they merge or not. The polls are going to be very interesting to see what happens as it relates to what happens next next spring. Because remember, the Liberal government only has the fall session and the spring session. That's it. That's all they have. Because the election is in the fall. So they don't have a lot of time to do anything to clean up.